it is essentially to set up what we're calling a skilled service, bringing in the best of the activity that's already taking place. So, for example, the King's Area Partnership, and there are certainly other players involved, such as the regional college, and using that service to act effectively as a brokering service between youngsters who are making decisions at school, so pre-16, age 16, between providers of training and between employers. And so this brokering service, which is essentially well established in other parts of the country, would try to make sure that the youngsters make at least informed, if not right, the right choices in terms of their career paths. Use intelligence from employers and from providers to guide the youngsters, but also to guide the providers in terms of the courses that are being provided, and, as I say, to seek intelligence from the employers about what is required in the market at the moment, the employment market, and indeed looking forward to what is likely to be required in the future, because training is a long-term investment. The overall, if you like, set of resources that the people that will make this work are set down in paragraph 9. So I think that fairly much sits within the original budget proposal that was agreed by the Executive Board, which had a total cost of this service of £250,000, with a net cost after contributions from other bodies, including the Enterprise Partnership, came in of £125,000. So the proposal that's been produced sits very close to that Executive Board resolution. Probably the other thing, as I'm sure Assembly members will have read the paper, just the other thing to flag up the proposal in terms of management of the system and governance is that there's currently a Enterprise Partnership Skills Service which deals with the northern part of the LEP geography, so that's Kingston, West Norfolk, Peterborough, and parts of Fenton, extending shortly into East Cambs and also dealing with Hunts. So the proposal would be to nest this activity, at least initially, within the Enterprise Partnership, because they have the background resources to do that. That would be an efficient way of managing it in the first instance. It could change into something different in the future, but the proposal, bear in mind, the skills environment is very fluid and to nest it there. And just in terms of governance, I think that the firm view around the table of the working group was that it would be helpful to have a similar group, or probably the same group of people, effectively acting as the sort of steering group for the skilled service activity, which would then be reporting through to the Executive Board, because the actual targets of the skilled service around number of apprenticeships and inclusion in training are actually held by the Board, but that working group is a subgroup of largely this group that acts as the steering group to advise the Board on achieving those targets. So, Chairman, I'll leave it there.
Thank you. So I can confirm from my point of view that this did seem to be a unanimous set of recommendations from the smaller group. Are there comments on this paper? Sir Michael.
Well, yes, I mean, we're already doing this, and do we need another body to tell us what we're doing? How should we be doing it? We take in 20 apprentices every year. We have our female apprentices, engineers, who go into the local schools, teach the schools that members teach STEM subjects, so they in turn will encourage the youngsters to come to us, and we then grade them and take on what we want. I mean, I favour the whole thing in principle, and don't want to do anything like a spoke in the wheel. But I'm just saying that there is already a lot of this happening, and what you need to do is find out what companies will take apprentices, what do they want them for, and will they employ them at the end of the apprenticeship, and then encourage the schools to have the right subjects to make that all possible, and working with Cambridge Regional College and all the rest of it. But I'm just wondering if we're setting up something awfully bureaucratic to achieve that when a lot of it's already happening. Could we not build on what we have?
Andy?
So, Chairman, I'd say we went on a similar journey as Sir Michael, and at the last meeting I was fairly negative about the proposal, but now having worked with the subgroup and seen what it brings together, and I think it's that key, it's the interfaces, I think, Sir Michael, Chair, which is so important here, is building relationships with the schools who don't necessarily have the same objectives as the businesses do. So we may well be very much in favour of the STEM subjects and getting them to do apprenticeships if the schools are trying to move them towards degrees and PhDs that may not meet the service. So I think having those interfaces is quite important. And although we have the same infrastructure yourselves and are able to provide those things, we know there are lots of companies who don't. And if nothing else, we're providing sort of flagship enterprises but we don't have the resources and the capacity to bring in other companies in our own sectors to do that. So I'm hoping this service will allow us to tap into it where we need to, but mainly to provide the option for smaller size organisations to come alongside us, who then themselves do not have the infrastructure to do what we can do.
But they'll have to have an obligation then to take apprentices on at the end of their apprenticeship. Otherwise you end up with a lot of unemployed apprentices.
That is the objective.
I mean, it's a pity that Jane Ramsey's not here actually, because I'm sure Edinburgh want lots of nurses. And
Bridget?
Francis was confirming.
Oh, sorry, I didn't see. Francis?
Have you finished? Two questions very quickly. I can't get an answer. I ask so many people this. If we're going to create 420 more apprentices, how many do we create at the moment?
County-wide figure, I think it's about 10,000. Probably. I think county-wide, over the course of the year, at least 20,000 we monitor on a monthly basis.
So we're trying to turn 20,000 to 20,000.
I think. I mean, the discussion in the work group went along. I think members probably will confirm that we kind of felt this was a fairly puny target. There's nothing to say that this service won't create a lot more of them. Actually, what we mustn't lose sight of is, we talked earlier about meeting the targets in the city deal. We need to meet 420. If we could create 2 or 3 times or 4 times that would be fabulous. But for the city deal purposes, we need to generate 420.
Just so I have
but I think we concluded we were probably a long way towards achieving that anyway.
Baseline is give or take 20,000.
Well, that's for the whole county.
That's for the whole county.
And we're talking about Greater Cambridge.
So what's the Greater Cambridge?
I wouldn't have that figure. I mean, we could disaggregate it, but I don't know.
Well, we need to, because how can we monitor 420 more unless we know more?
All of the infrastructure to do that is all available.
I'm afraid I don't have the figure, but the University of Cambridge did a study on how many apprentices were in this area, in the target sectors, the priority sectors. So that data is available through Lindsay, I think. Lindsay, is it?
Yeah, we've certainly got the data.
Yeah.
I haven't got it here, but yeah.
Could that be circulated?
And it's much less than 20,000.
Could that be circulated through Graham Watt?
We can, if you like, disaggregate and get as much data as we can circulated. So, yeah.
Because otherwise we can't.
you're talking of 84 a year, aren't you? This scheme. 84 extra per annum.
Over 5 years.
Over 5 years, yeah.
So yes, the data can be circulated by Graham. Is the answer.
And then the second thing is just how we measure the success of this. I'm not an expert on this. I'm told that it's not just creating the apprentices, it's them staying on their apprenticeship and not dropping out.
Yeah.
How does one monitor that?
I think again, I need to check that there is data. I think, Anne, you probably will know.
Skills Funding Agency can provide that. They're part of a group, a sort of stakeholder group.
So they'll all be part of the same data set overall. So, yeah.
Yes, and in the working group talked about this. One of the purposes of the continuation of the small group, which would work with the service, is that there would be a set of more detailed KPIs agreed and used to monitor the progress of this. And they are somewhat alluded to, I think, in section 6 at the top of page 66. That they obviously would need fleshing out into something much more measurable. But that was indeed the purpose, rather than let it swallowed up in a rep. It would be an accountability to people from this area representing the city deal. Bridget, sorry.
Okay, and I'm very supportive of this, and I'm very encouraged to know Dan Bailey of the Cambridge Area Partnership is taking the lead on this, because I've got huge respect for her. I've had quite a few meetings with her. It's a bit of a thin paper, and what I don't think it does is really highlight, what the actual potential of this is. Francis has already alluded to the fact that an awful lot of apprenticeships break down. So, I hope that this is going to be an opportunity to do some work looking at why apprenticeships break down and to look at ways of ensuring greater success. So there's a lot of evidence, which Anne has told me about young people, particularly from the sort of more challenging areas, not being work ready. So, give them apprenticeship, but actually they can't get out of bed, and they can't get themselves dressed, and they can't last a whole day without falling asleep. So, you know, there's work to do there in getting youngsters work ready, and there's work to do to keep young people in apprenticeship through a proper mentoring scheme. Because, you know, both, you know, I'm sure, I know your company do fabulous work, but actually, you know, I was talking to a headmistress of a school who had 3 apprenticeships. Well, 2 broke down almost straight away. Yeah. So organisations need support in order to make these apprenticeships work. So it's mentoring the young people and supporting the organisation. And the other thing I want to say is not just about business. There's scope for apprenticeships within the statutory sector and within the voluntary sector. And somehow they always forget about that. The voluntary sector should be crying out for apprenticeships.
For them.
Kevin?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, speaking as one who finds it very difficult to go through the whole day without falling asleep, although I have managed it this afternoon. I always want to know exactly what we mean by an apprenticeship, what it involves, because I think the term has been so widely used to mean everybody doing any form of training, no matter what that training is. And they're not apprenticeships. I mean, formerly, people that I'm a former printer, and apprentices in the print trade, when they qualified, they were called journeymen, and they were called journeymen for a reason. It's because there wasn't a job necessarily at the end of it, but you were fully qualified. You had all the skills you would need, and you would travel round until you found work. That gradually improved to that. More people were actually taken on and kept on in the places that they did their training and learnt their skills. But they were sort of, 3, 5, 7, 7-year apprenticeships. Then they came down to 5, and then they came down to 3. And I'm assuming we're not talking sort of anywhere near that length of time spent in training. And for me, it's a little bit of a misnomer, the use of the word apprentice. So unless there's a definite definition of it.
But I'm going to ask you to try and keep it focused on the recommendations as well.
I'll just help with that.
Yes.
Because when we talk about apprenticeships in this context, we are talking about somebody on the apprenticeship framework. Although that is changing, of course, because we've got trailblazers, but I won't go there at the moment. And that's at either level 2 or level 3. You would have known apprenticeships around level 3 when you did yours. They are of varying lengths. An engineering apprenticeship can go on for 3, 4, 5 years, just like yours did. But there are apprenticeships across almost all occupational areas now, although they kind of come and go. And so some of them are a bit shorter than others. But it's an apprenticeship framework, and it's all fleshed out and specified, and awards and qualifications are clearly within that.
So,
I've got another point to make.
Seize the chance.
Pardon?
Seize the chance.
Yes, quite. Can I recommend that we co-opt a CAP secondary head onto the advisory group? Because the advisory group in the stands doesn't have school input, and there will be a progression from what CAP is doing through Anne Bailey at the moment to the skills services, because Anne Bailey's service probably comes to an end shortly. So it'd be really important to keep CAP on board, I think.
I think that's a very sensible idea.
And in widening the status of apprentices, one can also add the fact that they go on to get full degrees from it. You get an HNC, and then a few more years and you can get a degree. Is it better than going to university and getting a big bill?
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to go turn boringly back to the recommendations here.
Just lift the status.
Could I ask now to for a show of hands, please? Those in favour of the recommendations?
Yeah.
And those against? So that's carried unanimously.